Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to be exploring an interesting story that's come up about apparently old screenwriters, or screenwriters that have written older films, are using an older copyright law to reclaim the rights to those films. Now, apparently this law is mainly used by musicians to reclaim their backlogs after a certain amount of time. Apparently it's only valid after 35 years after the initial copyright claim for the property is made. So after the inception of the property, 35 years later, if the person who created it does not own it, then they can use this law in order to reclaim it in some way. And this started out a couple of years ago when a man named Victor Miller, who was the writer or kind of co-writer of the first screenplay for the original Friday the 13th film in 1980, decided he wanted to file this claim in an attempt to gain the rights to the Friday the 13th franchise. Now, he initially won in September of 2018, but Sean Cunningham, who was the director and producer of the original film and who had previously owned the rights, filed an appeal, and the appeal was upheld, and they are now currently back in court. But the important thing is that Victor Miller initially won in court. Now, I think that's what spurred on this new series of claims that have been coming out, and there's a lot of really notable franchises that are on this claims list, and a lot of films that are actually due to have reboots or remakes made of them, which is very interesting. Now, on the list so far is we have the Terminator, which is the one of the biggest ones, since obviously Terminator Dark Fate is coming out next month. We have Die Hard, we have Beetlejuice, we have and we also have Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and they're saying that other franchises such as A Nightmare on Elm Street, as well as Predator, could also be further down the line as they hit their 35th anniversaries. So what's been happening now is that you have to examine the reason why the Friday the 13th lawsuit went back into why the appeal was upheld by Sean Cunningham, because essentially they claim that Victor Miller was on a work for hire. He was basically just, they hired him to write a screenplay, and he wrote the screenplay, and he gave them the screenplay, so it should be their intellectual rights, and that more of the story elements came from Cunningham and not from Miller. Cunningham kind of just dictated to him, and then he wrote the screenplay, even though I don't think Cunningham has a writing credit on the original Friday the 13th. So that's a lot of their argument there, but in other cases that's not necessarily the same, like looking at the Terminator. So most of the rights for Terminator are owned by James Cameron. He has to give the green light in order for them to give a movie. But the person who's filing this lawsuit for the Terminator is actually the woman that co-wrote the Terminator with him, Gail Ann Hurd, and Cameron has actually stated on several occasions that she did not actually do any writing, even though she has a co-writing credit, so it could have just been some kind of a collaboration thing. So I don't necessarily know if that could affect things, but hypothetically, if she wins that lawsuit, they would then have to go to the studios would then have to go to not only Cameron, but Heard if they wanted to make another Terminator film after Dark Fate, because originally the Terminator rights were owned by David Ellis and Skydance Media. So this opens up a lot of interesting loopholes in the studio system. And again, we got to go back to the fact that Die Hard was going to have a reboot done by Disney that they announced, and there's other franchises that Disney has that are also due up for reboots too, like Home Alone, which again, that won't hit its 35th anniversary for another 5 years, but still, that could be coming up as well. So there's a lot of hiccups here for this Hollywood reboot machine that I've actually been extremely critical of in recent years. So I'm kind of happy to see that Hollywood, the whole reboot culture, is getting kind of a hard stop right now. I don't mind the idea of them kind of, the screenwriters kind of fighting back a little bit. The only thing is that, I mean, obviously everybody's going to say this, is that the only reason why they're suing or why they're using this copyright law to get these rights back is because they want the rights back so they can use them to make more movies. So in other words, you're just kind of exasperating the process. But the thing is that, like with the Friday the 13th lawsuit, this could go on for years and years and years and years and years and go into deliberation. It depends on, the studios have an infinite amount of money to fight these things in court. It depends on how much money the people have and whether or not courts will uphold appeals and various other things. So there's a lot on the table in terms of how that's going to work, but at the same time, you're stopping Hollywood from making these endless amounts of remakes. And I think that's a good thing in the end. I think that forces them in the meantime to experiment on original properties, because if they can't exploit these big properties anymore, or at least not for the moment, they're going to look for the next thing. And if they get desperate enough, they might delve into original properties, which is kind of what you want them to do. We've had enough of the reboots. We've had enough of the remakes and the rehashings of old stories. We don't need to see that stuff a million times over in the theater again and again and again. And like I said, I think this could help maybe kind of curb this problem. I don't think you're ever going to totally get rid of the remake culture in Hollywood, because I think that it's so ingrained now that it's going to be there for a while. But if you can get them to experiment on new stuff, even if some of it's shit, I don't care, as long as it's something that's new and it's not something that we've seen before. It has to be there has to be some kind of a chance taken on originality, and this might be the only way to force Hollywood's hand at this point until these lawsuits are worked out, or how far they go, or in terms of how much are they going to have to sacrifice in order to get certain things made. So there's a lot of interesting stuff in there, and again, there's a lot of 80s films that are approaching their 35th anniversaries, and I'm sure there's a lot of other Hollywood screenwriters that are looking to file these various lawsuits once those 35th anniversaries come up. And Hollywood, again, probably already knows this on certain levels, that they're going to start seeing this type of thing go through once these films start hitting 35 years old. So it's something to keep in mind, and it's something that I feel like is going to come up quite a bit in the future. Now that we're seeing this initial flood of them, we're going to be seeing more and more and more from these early screenwriters. So that's my opinion on the situation. I want to know yours. Do you think that this could possibly curb the remake situation in Hollywood? Do you like the fact that some of these films are getting muddled down? Do you not want to see some of them remade? Put your thoughts in the comments. Again, I'd like to know what you're thinking. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?